So next up will be Matthew chapter 2.
Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him.
All right, so around this time, all right, now as you see, this is when Jesus was born in Bethlehem. The king of the area was named Herod. Right, and so it says that wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and met with the king, and they said, "Hey, where's this new king of the Jews? We'd like to see him. So we've seen him in the star in the east. We've come to worship him." Now, Herod being the king said, "Wait a minute. I'm the king, all right? So what do you mean a new king is born?" And in fact, it says he was troubled and all Jerusalem with him, right? Saying that we don't know what this is about. What do you mean you're here to find a new king? Because Herod would be the king, and when he was going to die, whoever his son would be the next king. And so it's not like some new king is going to come here out of left field. So they were just kind of confused and concerned about what they were talking about. And before we go on, I'll just say, if you've heard the Christmas story, of course, there are wise men involved here, right? And so how many wise men are there? As you see from what's written here, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem. Right? It doesn't actually say how many wise men there are, okay? So it's the tradition is 3 wise men, right? But it actually does not say how many wise men there are. Now we're going to read something later in the chapter, which I'll show you, which is what made people assume that it was 3 wise men, but in fact there is nowhere in the Bible where it says 3 wise men, right? But yet that is a recognized tradition, and you see the nativity scene and so forth with 3 wise men standing there and so forth. But yeah, as you see, just as wise men from the east came to see Herod the king.
When he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel.
All right, so after hearing this question or whatever from these wise men, they're coming looking for the new king of the Jews. So Herod's like, no, wait a minute, and he pulls together all of his advisors, if you will, all right? So he gets together all of his chief priests and scribes and says, what's going on? You guys are supposed to be the smart guys here. You're supposed to know what's going on. To tell me, advise me, where's this guy being born? Where's this king being born? Because I need to know this information. I'm sure he was like bawling them out to say about, why am I being blindsided here by these wise men showing up saying the new king of the Jews has been born, right? And so they said unto him in verse 5, it has to be in Bethlehem, right? Because there was another prophecy from the prophet Micah, which says what it says in verse 6. It says that now Bethlehem in the land of Judah, out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. All right. So again, it's kind of impressive, at least, that the advisors knew enough about the prophecies and the scriptures to be able to say, well, okay, they have to be referring to this in Micah, where it says that in Bethlehem is where this guy's going to be born. So therefore, if you're asking us where he's born, Bethlehem's the place. So go check out Bethlehem, and then you should find where this new king has been born. He got to be born in Bethlehem, right? Because the prophecy said so. And in fact, Joseph and Mary did not live in Bethlehem, right? So that it took some interesting workings to get them to Bethlehem for the baby to be born there. That particular story is told in the Gospel of Luke, but it's where that Caesar Augustus sent out a proclamation that everybody had to go to pay a tax and to be counted for a census and so forth. So everybody had to go where the father's hometown was, and Joseph's hometown was in Bethlehem. So therefore, even though Mary was like 8.5 months pregnant, she had to get on a donkey or whatever, and she and Joseph had to make the trip down to Bethlehem for this census, even though she was about ready to give birth. And in fact, she gave birth while they were in Bethlehem, so that the baby was born in Bethlehem, because the prophecy said so. And so when you think about it that way, if you remember I said in chapter 1 that God didn't want Joseph to walk away, right? For this to work, Mary had to marry somebody who was from Bethlehem. who was a native of Bethlehem, so that's why Joseph fit the bill, and so he was picked to be her husband, right? Because he was from Bethlehem, because it was necessary that they would get there to have the baby, and that then he'd be born in Bethlehem, because the prophecy said so.
Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was.
Now, if you remember when the wise men first came to Herod here, I mean, they said, we've seen his star in the east, which signals that he's been born, but they still didn't know exactly where to go. So that's why they came to Herod. In verse 2, he had said, where is he that's born king of the Jews, right? We've seen the star, but we're hoping you can help us out by pointing out where he's been born, as if he should know where he was born. But as we just read, he didn't know. He called together his advisors. They said the prophet said Bethlehem, so Bethlehem is the place. So now in verse 7, it says he kind of reassembles the wise men, however many there may be, and he brings them together and says, okay, listen, Bethlehem is the place, according to my advisors, so you go ahead to Bethlehem and go find him. It says go and search diligently for the young child. When you find him, I want you to come back and tell me where he is, because I'd like to go worship him too. And of course, that's not the case, and he would want to worship him. He wants to kill him, all right? But he's telling the wise men that make sure you come back and tell me, because I want to have my turn to worship him too. So when you find him, you come back and tell me where he is, all right? So based on that, the wise men depart in verse 9, and now the interesting thing with the star, of course, it says they saw the star in the east, but now it says the star is on the move. In verse 9, it says the star in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. So just by following the star, it directed them to the exact place where they had to go to find Jesus. So that's where the business of the star comes in, right? Again, in the nativity scenes, you usually see some star, hanging over the place where Jesus was. And so this was the star that they followed that directed them to where Jesus was.
When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, and frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way.
So they saw the star, and then they were excited. They said, hey, this is good. All right, the star is showing us where to go. So what we got to do is keep that star in sight and go to where it's directing, and we're going to find our way to Jesus. And they did that. And so in 11, they come to the house where he is. It says they saw the young child with Mary his mother, fell down and worshipped him, and then they presented gifts. It says when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh, right? Which again it's part of the Christmas story, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And in fact, this is the reason why people assume it's three wise men, because there's three gifts, right? So it would be assumed that each one would have a gift. So 3 gifts, 3 wise men, right? And it could be that's the case, all right? So like I said, I didn't say it wasn't 3. I said it just doesn't say that it's 3. So that's why it's assumed that there were 3 wise men, because there were 3 gifts given here: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then finally in 12, now as we said, that they were given instruction to come back to King Herod and tell him where Jesus was, but just in case they weren't as savvy as you all are to know that wasn't a good idea, all right? It says God warned them in a dream, all right? It says they're being warned of God in a dream. They should not return to Herod. They went back to their own country another way, right? This way they wouldn't even pass through Jerusalem, and where Herod could, or his spies could even see them coming back. They went back a different way totally and went back home and never went back to Herod at all. So this way he wouldn't know where Jesus was, at least not from them. And although it's not my intention necessarily to debunk the traditional Christmas story, all right, but if you've ever seen, again, a nativity scene, all right, and you see you see Mary and the baby Jesus there, and and then the shepherds are there, and the wise men are there. The wise men were not there when Jesus was born, right? Because as you see right here, right, it says by the time they showed up at Herod's place, they were already, I mean, Jesus was already born, that however long it took them to get to where they were going. And here in verse 11, it says, when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother. So, but by now they were already in some house somewhere. And so this was, a fair amount of time after the birth. Okay, so they were not there in the manger with the Christ child, right? They couldn't have made it there in time. But I mean, to depict the whole thing, I mean, you're gonna have, well, here's the manger, here's the house, whatever. So they just kind of, over time, it's all put together as if the wise men showed up the same day he was being born, which was just not the case. All right. So again, just for accuracy's sake, we just point out that the timing was a little bit different on some of these different events.
And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son.
The angel of the Lord being a busy angel in this particular time, all right, appearing in various dreams. Okay, so it says here he appeared in a dream to Joseph again, all right, saying that, listen, there's people who want to kill this child, right, and the king in particular, King Herod, wants to kill this child, and so even though I told the wise men don't go back there, which they didn't, but still the king isn't going to rest until he kills this child. So therefore you need to move out of here now, right? You need to get out of Bethlehem and go somewhere else. So he says, arise and take the young child's mother, flee into Egypt, and just hang out there until I get back to you, right? It says, until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Okay, so basically go to Egypt until further notice, and that puts them out of the reach of Herod, because Egypt was a different country. Right, so it says that's what they did. 14 he arose, took the young child's mother by night, departed to Egypt, and right, probably went that same night that they moved quickly. Right, and 15 was there until the death of Herod, so they actually stayed there until he was about 2 years old. Right, so they stayed there for a couple of years until Herod had died, and then it was going to be safe to come back. And also it points out there is even an almost random prophecy here in Hosea, where it says, "Out of Egypt have I called my son," right? And that's what that would mean, right? Because otherwise you get confused. What do you mean? My son's coming out of Egypt. Well, he's coming out of Egypt because that's where I sent him for a period of time. So for the first 2 years of his life, he was in Egypt, and then he came back to Jerusalem and Judea and so forth. So it was, out of Egypt have I called my son, because that's where he came from for the rest of his life.
Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. Eventually,
the king figures out that the wise men are not coming back, right? And so again, people aren't stupid, right? So he knew they weren't coming back, and so he says, when he saw he was mocked of the wise men, because he gave them direction, come back here and tell me, and they went back another way. So I'm sure he's waiting, and they're not coming back. So it says he was exceeding wroth, which means very angry, right? And so he figures, well, then if I don't know which baby is this king, I'll kill them all right? I mean, so he talked about being mean and wicked, right? So that's what happened, right? He went and had every man child under 2 years old killed in Bethlehem and the surrounding area. This way we'll kill them all. This way I get the one that I want to kill. I'll just kill every single baby, since the wise men didn't come back and tell me which one he is. Right, so that's what he did. He says, everyone from 2 years and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So they figured out, okay, from the time they said he was born until now, so because it's probably a couple of years had passed, and so he said, 2 and under, we're getting them all. Right, so he killed every single one, and of course the sad part being he didn't even get the one he was going for. All right, but yet all these other poor families, suffered this loss because the king was out to kill the Christ child. Okay? And in 1718, again, as I said many times, when something fulfills a prophecy, they point it out. So 17 says it's fulfilled a prophecy by, of course, it's not Jeremy, but it's Jeremiah, even though they put Jeremy here. But from the prophecy of Jeremiah, verse 18 appears there. It says where in Ramah there would be a voice heard, lamentation, weeping, great mourning, and so forth, because of what happened here with Herod killing all these children 2 years old and under.
But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene.
So when Herod had finally died, right, which was probably not much after this, right, this is the angel of the Lord appears again in a dream to Joseph and says, okay, it's safe to come back now, right? Those who sought to kill the child is dead, right? So you can come back. And so in 21 it says he arose and took the young child's mother, came into the land of Israel. So they're coming back, right? As it said earlier, that out of Egypt have I called my son, right? However, Herod is dead, but his son is now the king, right? Archelaus is now the king, right? And so it says he did reign in Judea. So even though he had not necessarily said that he had any axe to grind with this baby, but still, let's not be too risky here. So let's not go back to our old homeland, right? Where that's why I said they didn't go. He says turn aside into the parts of Galilee. They didn't go back to where they lived before, just in case. They said let's go hang out in Nazareth for a while, right? We'll let him grow up in Nazareth. So they established a home there, right? But even that it fulfills a prophecy, right? It says which was spoken by the prophet that he shall be called a Nazarene. So again, otherwise it wouldn't make sense to say why would he be called a Nazarene? He wasn't born there, his family wasn't from there, but he grew up there, so he was called a Nazarene, and that's where he grew up in Nazareth, which is where they went this way. It wouldn't be suspicious or in suspicion of the new king that this was that child that his father was trying to kill. Because if you think about it, if he were to show up in Bethlehem, he would kind of stick out because he'd be the only boy of that age, right? Since they killed every other boy that was that age, so he would have been the only boy that age. And say, wait a minute, how do we have a 3-year-old boy here and everyone else is under 6 months, right? It wouldn't make sense, and that would be suspicious. That's why they went somewhere else to grow up this way that wouldn't be suspicious that way.